Speer, and I is called Spearhead Solutions. It's a branding business, and I also run a podcast, Branding BFF. And I also want to thank Mike Barugel, who is not able to be here with us today. He is the General Business Counselor at the Small Business and Technology Development Center, and he helps me with behind-the-scenes logistics. And also, we have Queen City Podcast Network recording our production today. And thank you guys for being here and helping us out, since this event today is a combination of in-person and virtual. So let's get started with you guys. Want to hear a little bit about who you are, what you do, and I have an icebreaker question for all of you, which is, what's brought you the most joy in the last year and a half? And let's start with Aimee. You look ready to go.
All right, is my sound working okay? Great. Okay, so my name is Aimee Bellmore, and I am a full-time professor at Pfeiffer University. I teach counseling and human services, and then I also have a private practice. So I've been in private practice, clinical mental health for a little over 2 decades, which kind of ages me. But as far as the answer to your icebreaker, what's brought me joy in the last, year and a half? You know, one of the things that has brought me joy has actually been spent creating some really positive spaces in my home environment. And so I've really done some transforming of my backyard. I planted a garden. I planted these big banana plants that provide all this lovely shade, and now they're about, 20 feet tall. But I love going back there and just sitting and feeling like I'm on vacation or on a tropical island. And so that's just been a really nice change in the last 18 months.
Nice. Okay, how about you, Kelley?
Good afternoon. My name is Kelley Logan. I am the owner and creator of the Natural Lab, which happens to be right directly across the street from this building. I am a clinical nutritionist, a functional medicine practitioner, and a health and wellness fitness trainer. The answer to your question, what has brought me the most joy this year, I would really say, even as a gym owner, just being able to work out outside and enjoy seeing people, being outside with their pets, their loved ones, and having picnics, like I feel like we should be doing all the time anyway. But it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Juan?
Hello, everybody. My name is Juan Garzon. I'm the executive director of Innovate Charlotte, which is a nonprofit that supports the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in town, and also of Pitch Breakfast, which is another nonprofit that supports entrepreneurs through our monthly pitch events. Yeah, excited to be here. As far as what made me happy or brought me joy in the past 18 months, and it's been quite an 18 months. Yes. I've got 4 small kids at home, and I was working from home most of the time. And my kids brought me a lot of joy through those past 18 months, but the thing that really brought me joy was when they went back to school and got, just for a little bit of a break. Yeah, I'd say that's it.
Good breather. Okay, so the premise for today is really, this last year and a half has been a roller coaster. No matter what situation you guys have been in, we all know that it's been an up and down experience. And so through that, we have had to bring a lot of resilience. And also, we know that we need space to also recover, but we're still kind of in the thick of things. So what I wanted to do was to bring you guys together, and we're really focusing on mind, body, and spirit. And while they are all interconnected, I think it's really great to have an expert in each area. And so we have Kelley for the body, we have Aimee for the mind, and we have Juan for the spirit. And in this case, we're really looking at entrepreneurial spirit primarily. So all the questions, today, you guys can answer them from both the professional side and personal, because we all definitely want to learn both from the expert side and how, as entrepreneurs, we navigate these situations. So the first one, and let's start with the mind today. How do you describe resilience, and what mindset is needed to be resilient?
Okay, so resiliency, this is actually it's a big topic. And when I approach working with my clients in my private practice, and my private practice, the name of it is Sagrado Healing Arts. I do about half of my work in Spanish and half in English. And a part of what I do is that I need to center myself. So this is my personal work before I sit down professionally, is that I need to make sure that I'm practicing what I call mindfulness skills, which I know that term is used a lot these days. But for me, it's my ability to take the thinking, sometimes the thinking in my mind might be very distracting. And so really trying to walk my talk as far as what I work on with clients is taking that mental energy, those distracting thoughts. And I've been practicing not attaching myself to those thoughts. And that is a daily practice that I need to do in order for me to be useful to my clients. It's also a foundation, I believe, for resiliency. And so when I am working with clients, especially during this COVID era, there have been so many different reactions. Some of my clients have really struggled and their depression or anxiety has gotten worse. And so some of those thoughts, so if we're talking about the mind, I'm talking about the power of thoughts. And what I always remind my clients is that thoughts are just thoughts. Thoughts are not necessarily reality. And that sometimes is a huge aha moment. It's like, but no, these thoughts seem so real. And so creating space between me and my thoughts, it's that creating of space, which actually is something that we can do. It's a skill that we can learn. I like to call it the witness self or growing the observer self, because sometimes those thoughts can be so powerful that it can seem like I'm in the middle of them or drowning in them, or my clients might feel that way as well. And so what I work on with them and with myself too, is saying, let's take a step outside of that thought and actually look at it. Tell me the nature of it. Describe it for me. What's the texture of it? Where does it live in your body? Now I'm crossing over into body. And then just that little bit of space can actually bring some relief. It's like, oh, wait, I'm not my thoughts. So I'm going to stop there and let others speak on the topic.
So I think that's great because starting with the mind, it naturally leads to the body for Kelley. So
I think, I think one of the biggest things that we have to really pay attention to and understand is that we're created to be resilient beings. Everything is created to be resilient. If there was a flower and there's a storm outside, and the flower cannot withstand the storm, what happens? You fall, you die. And if it can, it grows a little stronger and stands a little longer, right? And there's a level of resilience in everything that we experience in every aspect of our life. And so with my clients, with working with the body, say, and I'll just use, a scenario for instance, say, they worked out and they did really good and they lost a lot of weight and maybe they experienced a loss in their life and it just really derailed them. And from them being derailed, they didn't want to work out anymore. They didn't want to be a part of the gym family anymore. They didn't want to do anything. And then it goes back to that mind again, creating that mental space to understand, listen, things like this happen in life. I know there's a lot of us that have been knocked down many times and had to forcefully pick ourselves back up. And so it's just understanding that it's always going to happen. And so with that, I just try to create a mind space and give them the space to understand that, it's okay to not be okay at times. And it's okay to realize when it's time to get back up.
Right. And now Juan, let's talk about entrepreneur spirit.
Yeah, spirit's an interesting one, right? Because a lot of the things that come to mind are more sort of mindset, and the actions that you take. But one of the things that I get to enjoy by being in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, if anybody hasn't heard that term, it's really the amount of organizations that exist to support you as an entrepreneur, is that idea that as an entrepreneur, you're not alone, right? Entrepreneurship is can be a very lonely path because, you, even if you've got employees, you're sort of focused on, you own the business. Right. You sort of have to make sure that everything sort of happens. But understanding that there is a community of people and resources and organizations and education and mentorship and everything that's out there that wants you to succeed, I think is a big factor in entrepreneurial resilience, especially in the past couple of years, because those types of resources have just really worked in overtime to make sure that they are there and that they help you as an entrepreneur. And, at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is all about problem solving. And, for a lot of entrepreneurs, these challenges that we've had over the past couple of years are another problem to solve. So they can seem insurmountable. And sometimes, depending on the industry, it might mean that there's a change. But as long as a founder, you remember that you are not your business, right? And so there's
Correct.
that kind of separation, and a failure of a business or shutting down a business or a decision doesn't equate to you as a person. And you
Definitely.
keep that entrepreneurial spirit and that sort of mindset. You know, usually you can, this is a learning experience for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like it's another layer on top of already the challenges of entrepreneurship. So knowing that there's more organizations out there for support, and there's been grants and there's been different things that have enabled some businesses to stay afloat that maybe wouldn't have, I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And there really are a lot of them out there, and anything that you might think that you need, somebody to talk to, someone to help you through the financial, someone to help you through marketing and all that. There are resources out there for that.
Yeah. And that's a great thing that you guys are doing with Innovate Charlotte. Okay. So the next one is, what's the impact of being resilient for so long on mind, body, spirit? And then let's just go back to you, Juan.
Yeah, the impact, it's going to have a big impact on definitely on mind and body. On spirit, you have a lot of entrepreneurs that if they don't have those two parts right, they're going to get worn down. And we see that all the time. It's a founder who's been working at it for a while. You add something like the past couple of years, or just the regular rigors of running a business or growing a business, and you start to get burnt out. And that burnout often has to do with not asking for help, right? Not asking for help. And I mean, this crosses all of them, I imagine. From a business perspective, it's not taking advantage of some of the resources that are out there. Or really just starting to, like, as I said before, equate the business with yourself. And that can be very, that could weigh very heavily on you. And so, yeah, you really need to take care of these two in order to keep that spirit going.
That's great. Okay, let's go to Kelley.
It has a huge impact if you're trying to build muscle, obviously, or if you're trying to lose weight or to incorporate any type of different lifestyle as far as your health and wellness and fitness. A lot of times I put a lot of my clients on, if they have any type of illness in their body and they want to exercise, but I know it's not feasible for them at the time, I'll just say walk. And then after you're done walking, maybe we can add in some HIIT interval training. Then after that, we can start weightlifting. So it's this progressive resilience, right? As your body starts to build a better physical muscle, mental muscle, health muscle. I know that a lot of times my clients and I, we go into this 3-day fast where we're only drinking water. Now, if you've never done that before, you're not going to be able to do that just right off the top, So creating that resilience as you're growing that muscle in life really equates to you growing more discipline in any aspect that you decide to put your mind to at that moment.
Do you find over the last year and a half that people need to take smaller steps because of the resilience they're having to have out in the world? Or do you feel like you're seeing things to be pretty comparable for the body?
Honestly, since COVID, I think that when I've had clients come back to me or come back and forth, they are typically done, and I'll say that to say, during the COVID time when we had this conversation prior to us getting started, a lot of people have really had to sit with themselves and deal with who they were instead of the distractions of going out to eat with friends or drinking with friends or partying with friends and family and loved ones. So you had to really tap into who I am and who do I want to be. So a lot of times when I get clients that are coming into me, I wouldn't necessarily say post-COVID because we're still going through it, but they're like, I've sat with myself long enough. Now I'm ready to let's just get it done. Whatever I need to do, I'm ready, So I guess it just depends on the person and their mindset.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, Aimee, how about you? Like, what are you seeing?
Sure. So, I mean, one perspective is that prolonged resiliency, it depends, of course, on the context and the person, but some of my clients have experienced almost this feeling of pressure, especially those clients that had to take on extra responsibilities like working from home while educating their children at home, or many of my clients who are single. And so they would go home and not have anybody there and not have the ability to socially interact. And so at first it's like coming up with ways to be resilient, ways to like, let me try and see the silver lining here. Let me do something differently. It's going to be okay. And then after 18 months, and it's still here, COVID. And I know as a professor, I was disappointed, but of course supportive that we have a mask mandate at my university. But teaching with a mask on in front of a bunch of students is not my preference, and it is a burden. And all of us have been globally, we are all experiencing this burden in a variety of different ways, and we've been tapping into our resilience for a while. So here's what I say about that is that sometimes we need a break. And a break can look like, and this is so simple, but it can look like, let it all go and let me come back to the here and now. There is such a power in the present moment that we sometimes fail to rest in it, and we fail to remember that it exists right here. And if my thoughts are taking me to the past, which can exacerbate depression, or taking me to the future, which can increase anxiety, then I'm putting some pressure on myself, and that resiliency might just go out the window. So I say, come back, and I'll have to do it sometimes, many times a day. And I'll remind my clients, it's okay to do it 100 times a day. Come back to the moment, look around me. I say, lose my mind and come back to my senses. We got to talk more. Lose my mind and come back to my senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? And then once I can come back here, then I can ask myself a very simple question. What's the next right thing? That's it. I don't have to worry about what the next right thing is next week, because that can be some pressure. But if I can just say, just do the next right thing. And if I don't know what the next right thing is, I can sit and be patient until I know what that is. And that's okay.
That's great. I like the simple suggestions, because I do think when you're overwhelmed and you're feeling tapped out, that we do need the simple things to just kind of get us back on track. So I love that example.
Do you mind if I touch on that really quick? I think that, and that is a great point, because we do live in a society where we are always going, we are always doing, we're always being. So we don't know what it feels like to just chillax a little bit. You know what I mean? So a lot of times we do have to bring ourselves back to simply just being, and that's okay. And then work our way from there.
That's great. I like seeing how that kind of works across the board for everybody. So I think we probably touched a lot on this already. How do you help people recover during this time? We talked about the resilience, but I do think recovery is part of it. So is there anything additional that you guys have to add on, like this idea of like push, 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 resilient, 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 and then knowing you need that breather, you need that space, you need to take that small action. But if we're thinking about moving into that recovery space of where we're not ignoring what's happened, but we're saying, okay, let's look ahead to what we can do to move us to this next level or recover, or whatever word you want to use. Let's start with you, Aimee.
Okay, so that word recovery, I think of healing, and I think that all of us can maybe ask ourselves, what does our recovery plan look like? It's not just for those of us that might be in more traditional recovery from drugs and alcohol, or from any kind of somebody experiencing a mental illness. I believe that our recovery plans are for all of us, and so it's unique. And it can look different for everybody, but I think asking that question and then reflecting and saying, what's my recovery plan? Okay. And so personally, my recovery plan, I do think about mind, body, spirit. For me, it has to be balanced in those areas. And what I notice is that when I get imbalanced, the parts of me that I don't like start showing up. So the parts of me that might be a little snippy, the parts of me where when I'm driving are asking the guy in front of me, why are you going so slow? Well, the speed limit's 35, you're going 27. These are the parts of me that are my uptight parts of me that I don't like so much, but it's a sign. So I think that something to consider anyway as a part of our recovery plans is that instead of seeing the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't like so much as, oh, I hate that, let me bury it. Instead, I say engage it. There's a book called Feeding Your Demons. It's a book based in Buddhism, but it's the idea of making friends with that part of yourself that maybe isn't your favorite and saying, what message do you have for me? Oh, okay, uptight Aimee is here. That means I'm not in balance. And so what do I need to do for my spirit and my body and my mind? And then it's the next right thing. And then it's easier to figure out what I need to do next. So build the recovery plan.
And I really like you pointing to when those things show up, it's about imbalance. And I think that that's a perfect example of the uniting of these three areas. So thank you for that. That's great. Juan, how about you?
Yeah, when I think of recovery from spirit, and I tie the spirit very much back to the doing of the entrepreneurial
Yeah.
endeavor. I think of a business that has either the business has hit a wall, right, because of lack of clients or whatever, or the founder just you can have a very successful business and have a founder that's just not in balance, right, themselves, and that has a lot to do with definitely with mind and body. But in how that impacts their entrepreneurial spirit, I think one big thing is to stop, take a breather, and remember why you started the business in the first place. Was it if you started a consulting, or you started a bakery, or whatever it might be, what was the main driver for you to start that business? What was, it was your love or passion for something. And maybe your business has grown to the point where that's not all that you're doing. You also have to do the bookkeeping, and you're dealing with payroll and human resources and like all, sales and all these, and maybe that's not what you have a passion for. And simply reminding yourself what your why is, why you started this business. And you know what, if the business is something that you need to shut down and then reopen in a very different way, then great, like connect with your why and go do that. And it's okay if the business fails and you do something else, right? That's you have to pursue the passion first. And I'd say the other is, recognize when there are certain areas of running a business that might not be something that you want to do anymore. Maybe you've gotten to that point where you're like, look, I get a headache every single time I stare at my financial statements. I need to find someone else that can help me with the finances, or I need to partner with someone else that can handle the sales side so I can work on the product side or the doing side. So reconnecting with your why and then reassessing all of the pieces of your business and making sure that you're focused on that which brings you joy, that you can find a state of flow in, are huge in recovering that entrepreneurial spirit.
I think you really touched on something important with the joy piece too, because yes, your why, often there's passion and there's some functional things mixed in there, but I do think there's the joy of why we are in business for ourselves is a huge one. And I think sometimes that can be, you get lost, particularly in the last year and a half. And also I know personally, like I had to find some stuff outside of the business to just have a different brain space, just to have some things that I could kind of pour myself into that weren't just the business. And I honestly don't know if I would have found them pre-COVID. One's artisan perfume and one is Formula One. And I have made friends and connections and things online, and had conversations I never dreamed I'd be having. And these are things like a year ago, I would never have thought. If you told me I'd be into these things, I'd be like, you're crazy. You're crazy. So I do think, especially for entrepreneur spirit, there's something about joy in the business, but also joy outside the business. And I think those can be things that we can neglect when we feel like the world is kind of caving in on us. How about you, Kelley?
So I kind of relate recovery to root cause for me. And so I, as a functional medicine practitioner, functional medicine, biology-based medicine, getting to the root cause of why things happen. And I use this in my practice all the time, and I'm pretty sure we've all been through this. Say you were in a relationship and you and your partner broke up. And from you guys breaking up, it made you really, really sad. And so when you're really sad, we tend to eat our feelings. How many people eat their feelings? A lot of us, all right? So we start to eat our feelings and we notice that we're gaining weight in the stomach area. So we'll look in the mirror and be like, I really want to fix this, or I really don't care. And a lot of times, if you're still stuck in that space, you really don't care. So you start gaining weight around the stomach area, which leads to insulin resistance, which leads to prediabetes, diabetes, kidney failure, dialysis, so on and so forth. And although that is very dramatic, we don't just wake up and become diabetic. We don't wake up and have thyroid issues or infertility issues or anything, any ailment that we may have experienced is always from that root cause that we have not healed from. So a lot of times with my clients, I try to pull up the weeds that we've been burying for so long that has caused us to act and react in the way that we've been reacting, and we don't even recognize it, right? So, I mean, we can use that in every single aspect of any type of situationship we've ever been in. So in order for my clients and myself to recover, I have to tap into, where is that coming from? Where did that stem from? Was it childhood? Was it friends? Was it whatever the case may be? And then getting to that root cause and being able to work through that, then I'm able to recover in the process.
That's great. And I again see that connection to the mind as well.
As everything.
So personally, what are you guys doing to recover in this most recent time period, the last couple months? And it can be in any of the three areas. It doesn't have to just be in your respective area. Who wants to go first?
Okay, I will chime in here because actually Juan, something you said about entrepreneurial spirit and failure. And God, failure has such a bad connotation, doesn't it? It's almost like we need to have a new word just to breathe some new life into it, because maybe another word for failure might be reinvention, or maybe it might be, maybe even rebirth or pivoting. So in my business, in my private practice, I never ever thought that I would enjoy telehealth or that it would be beneficial in any way. And so, of course, during COVID, my office, I just moved into a new office, y'all, on February 28th of
Wow.
2020. New office, got it all decorated, put in all my nice things because I moved from one office to another. And 2 weeks later, I couldn't use that office anymore. And I was paying rent resentfully. And I had to work through my resentment, right, for an entire year. But what I did is I transitioned into telehealth. And I was telling Sam that there were some wonderful surprises. I was very skeptical, but via telehealth, I was able to see my client's full face. In the office, we would have had masks on. Also, I was able to get to know my clients on a deeper level. And so my clients then in telehealth, they'd give me a tour of their house. I got to meet their cats and their dogs. I've met so many clients, mothers and fathers and babies, that I never, ever would have met had I been in the regular office space. Also, for many of my Spanish speaking clients, because I work on immigration cases, some would travel 2-3 hours to come get to me, and now they didn't have to. So it became an accessibility positive. So all these things that I thought I never would have thought of from an entrepreneurial standpoint and a business standpoint, and could have been conceived initially as a failure, was able to I was able to move in a different direction mentally and, from a business standpoint, and I'm pleased. And so that was a change. That was a part of my recovery change. I could have been resistant and dug my feet in because sometimes it's hard to make change, but allowing it to happen, trying not to fight the current.
That's a good point, not fighting the current. How about you, Juan?
It's funny because as soon as you said that, I sort of hesitated. So with this whole pandemic, and I was home a lot more, started to go outside, started to just try to walk every day. And then that turned into running every day. I was feeling really good about myself.
Yeah.
And then I dropped off now in the past couple of months. So definitely something I need to get back into. But I'd say one big thing that, and this whole past year and a half has been tough in just lots of different ways, just personally, professionally, just a lot of things. And one of them is just being more open about that. And so I know a couple people in the room here know that, had a healthcare issue with my sister, and helping to kind of deal with all of that. And it's been a lot. And I would say that prior to the pandemic, people would say, how you doing? I would say, fine, right? That's just,
right.
And now I'm a little bit more likely to just do you really want to know? Because I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of that. And I'd say third, it's just this, at the end of every day, I'll watch something completely unrelated to what I'm doing. I mean, I used to fall asleep, reading a business book or something that had to do with the work that I'm doing. I never escaped it. And now it's nope, putting this down, turning on a Ted Lasso and watching that before I go to sleep so that I can completely reset my brain. And the next morning I'll worry about whatever challenges I have, then.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do little things here and there.
No, that's good. And I do remember seeing you at a networking event, and we did have that conversation about your sister. And I was like, that's so awesome. I mean, this is why we're all here, is to really learn from each other and to really not just have that surface oh yeah, everything's good. So I think you're definitely embodying that, and I appreciate that. I enjoy that. It's very helpful. How about you, Kelley? How are you looking at recovery?
Well, Juan, I will say I can relate to you wholeheartedly on, completely removing yourself from the business aspect. At the end of the day, I used to do the same thing. go to sleep listening to podcasts or reading books about the next move that I'm
Yep.
trying to make in my sleep, I guess. I don't know. But now I'm binge watching Netflix and it's all good. But I will say two things. I am the eat the elephant type person. I want to do everything at one time. It needs to be done my way or I'm not stopping. And so during this entire period, I've realized I've actually accomplished more by eating it bite by bite, piece by piece, versus trying to take on everything at one time. And the second thing is really listening to that inner voice. And we neglect it all the time. I mean, I have before. And it's, you hear what your intuition says or what your body tells you to do. And even as a health practitioner, I'm like, I know that I don't need to work out today, but I'm going to work out anyway because maybe it's going to help in some sort of fantastic way that I think it's supposed to. And it doesn't at certain moments. Sometimes you just have to relax, So for me, it's, really listening to that inner voice, whether you take the blue pill or the red pill or whatever works, and just really tuning into who you be at that specific moment.
That's great. So now looking a little bit broader, what bigger trends or shifts are you noticing with your clients or participants in the last few months? Any changes, any shifts? Let's go with you, Kelley.
Well, I wouldn't say the pandemic is coming to a close because we don't know that. I will say my clients have gotten a little lackadaisical. They've gotten a little comfortable, and that could be them, or that could be me. I've allowed them to be comfortable in their space. I realized that, as we've been coasting, it's still that level of, as you've tapped into yourself, as we've been in the house for so long, is that level of complacency and understanding when it's the time to move. So that's really the biggest shift. They've become a little bit lackadaisical, but I think that's a two-way street because I've allowed them to be so they can heal and recover. Sure. But it's time to crank it up a notch. So
yeah. How about you, Aimee?
Well, what I've seen with my clinical mental health clients, actually, even in the last week, I had some folks that used to be my clients 14 years ago, and reached back out to me, found me online, and just started saying, "Hey, I think I just need to do some maintenance work." And that's happened a couple of times with two different people just in the last week or two, and that what I'm seeing is just folks that are seeing now that mental health is, and working with the mind, they want it to be integrated in a part of their day-to-day activities, that it's not just like I need a crisis in order to go to therapy, that now it's like, hey, I want to make sure I'm healthy and be proactive. That's a big shift. And I don't know if COVID has given us permission to look at mental health a little bit differently. I'm not sure. Maybe it's because we're all sharing some mental health difficulties together, and maybe it's destigmatizing all of it. And maybe there is a silver lining there of just saying, hey, I want to do this ahead of time before a crisis. So that could be a trend that I hope stays. Let's see what happens.
And I do think it's great to destigmatize. I mean, I know I started with a therapist right at the beginning of COVID. And recently I've been going to her twice a month. And I remember telling her, like, I love that I'm not working on anything like that's urgent. I'm so happy that I get to go deeper into things that, it's like you're talking about maintenance or things that maybe you didn't realize were a bigger deal than they are from the past, or, from your childhood, or things that you were like, that's kicking around still. But I think it's so true. Like, this idea of maintenance is such a important thing because, we already know that we do that with the body. You can't just work out once and then 3 months later work out again and expect that you're going to see any results. And even with, entrepreneurship, I mean, you certainly work on developing your business all along. You're not just saying, oh, I'm just going to let things slide. It's a constant thing. And I do think that the mind is something that's, something we also want to cultivate ongoingly. So what are you seeing, Juan?
Yeah, trend wise,
Trends.
I'd say that, what I described about being sort of more open, I'm seeing that in general, right?
Mhm.
People tend to be more open about how they're doing, which is really, really important in the entrepreneurial world because people always see another entrepreneur and always assume like, oh my gosh, I heard you just raised a round, or I heard you just landed this client, or you just opened an office. You must be so successful right now.
Right.
I must suck because I am pretending to be successful with my own business. And 90% of the entrepreneurs out there are all struggling in some way,
Sure.
but it's always, that's why I say entrepreneurship can be a very lonely road because you can meet with other entrepreneurs, but unless you've got a safe environment to really talk about it, or like we said, the pandemic's kind of given permission to talk a little bit more about the reality of running a business. People tend to be alone. You could be at a networking event with, 500 founders and there's a majority of the founders in there, they feel alone in their journey. So that's, I think, a positive development. Kind of in a bigger sense for businesses, I am seeing entrepreneurs that are really starting to build their confidence in their entrepreneurial ability. Because if they have survived this long
True.
with everything that's going on, then they're going to be able to take on so many other challenges, going forward. There have been founders that have not been successful, and most of them by now have either shut their business or pivoted or done something different.
Mhm.
And so the ones that are there now have been able to persevere and have figured out how to deal with all, the different world that we live in.
Right.
And that's added a good sense of confidence that I'm hopeful will continue on. I love seeing college students who are starting companies right now, like in the middle, global pandemic, no one's seen this for 100 years. And we've got companies that are like, now's a good time to start a business. And it's great because if you can be successful now, right,
Yeah.
you're just going to be able that much better to equipped to handle some challenges in the future. So I like seeing some of that, but definitely the importance of just entrepreneurs being more open with each other is a trend that I hope continues.
Yeah. I think it used to be like, oh, how can you make your business recession proof? And now we're like, we have the additional, how do you make your business pandemic proof that we've never had to think about before? So last question for you guys before we open up to the audience is, what tips do you guys have for our community of entrepreneurs here? And let's start with you, Juan, because you were just talking about some good stuff.
I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of resources out there to your disposal. I mean, you can get free counseling, you can get someone to review your business plan, you can get mentorship. There really is so much. So a big tip is if you're starting a business, thinking about starting a business, already have a business, seek out those resources. And those resources really depend on what kind of business, what stage you're in. They're different. Certainly unbiased, our organization, Innovate Charlotte, has a lot of different resources that we can connect you with if you're a founder and to make sure that you get that support. But definitely seek out those resources and watch a little Ted Lasso before you go to sleep. It's a really great show.
That's great. How about you, Aimee?
Ted Lasso's good. I like that. I'm starting on the second season now, but I also think similar to what you're saying, Juan, is that we can really help each other out by supporting and collaborating and reaching out to each other. During this pandemic time, I've had so many first-time meetings via Zoom or on the phone that might have originally taken place, in person or maybe not at all. But and that it's okay. It's okay to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about this. I've got ideas. How might we be able to collaborate?" Like I love that. I love the synergy of potential collaboration between businesses. Like how can we support each other so it's a win-win? I like to find those types of situations. And so I think that we can do that. And then, otherwise, falling back on what we've been talking about with the mind is that there's so much that we can do to keep our minds healthy and to also open up to others, destigmatize mental health too, so that we can make sure that we are hopefully being as balanced as possible as we move through this.
Yeah, that's great. And Kelley.
I definitely agree with Juan and Aimee. Take advantage of the resources that you have. And I know a lot of times the reason why people don't like to reach out or haven't reached out to a lot of people is because they don't have the confidence in their business quite yet to be able to talk to someone that may be a little bit more, have a little bit of a hierarchy over them in their business. So I know for me, when I first started mine, I was YouTube University all day, so a lot of times if you don't know, I moved here without knowing anybody. So my friends became philosophers and business owners in the same field that I'm in. So definitely take advantage of the free resources that you have until you build the confidence to be able to tap into some of those other ones. Another thing is I don't know if anybody's starting a business or continually growing their business, you cannot build a house on a faulty foundation. So a lot of times we're failing at different little aspects of our business because we didn't build the proper foundation from the beginning. So going back to the drawing board is very important.
That's great. Well, now we have an opportunity for questions, both the people here who are here in person and the community that's online with us today. So I know, Sam, you'll be fielding some of the online questions, and obviously you guys here can raise your hand if you have any direct questions. So if you have a question that's for everybody, great. We might not have time to have everybody answer, but if you don't care who, go ahead and say it can be anyone. If you have a specific question for one of our panelists here, please do let us know. So let's start with Sam. Okay, yeah, I will repeat the question back. Oh, the train has a question. Yeah, so for those of us who are in person, we can see this train. It's so close to us going by. Okay, so the question is for you guys, like going through this pandemic, what's something that you feel like you definitely want to keep that maybe you didn't have before, or what is something you definitely don't want to ever do again? So who wants to answer it? Juan?
Yeah, and I'll actually hit on something that you said before. So Zoom calls are something that definitely have a place just in terms of convenience and speed, scheduling a quick Zoom call versus let me drive to the other side of town to meet you at a coffee shop, wait in line, and realize this was a 15-minute conversation. And in terms of what to get rid of, it's Zoom calls, because they're just not good for every type of conversation. So keeping them for certain things and then getting back to face-to-face for other types of conversations, that answers both for me.
That's great. Aimee?
The balance of Zoom. Yes, I agree. And for me, what a keeper is telehealth. I've also there are certain states now that where you can be an out-of-state licensed clinician and be a registered telehealth provider. And so I'm expanding in that area. So now I'm pretty much covering the whole Southeast. So I'm going to keep telehealth. And right now what I've gotten rid of is actually the physical office space, which is why I'm here. So I can connect so that if I really do need an in-person office space, I can use a co-working space for those types of situations that really need to be in person. So it kind of moved me to admin. So there you go.
That's great. Kelley?
I think both of those are awesome. I can agree with you. Zoom classes, definitely want to keep Zoom classes, being that I know there's people all over that would like to work out and just can't physically be here or don't want to physically be here. And that's totally fine. Telehealth as well. I'm seeing nutrition clients virtually. And everybody needs help no matter where they are. So I'm happy to be able to assist everywhere.
That's great. Do we have any in-person questions? Sam? You've got more virtual? Okay, great. Okay, so the question is there a message that you'd like to give to your clients about resiliency moving forward? And is it something that they're just not understanding so far, or something that hasn't been communicated yet that you'd like? What do you think that is, Sam? Okay, so just interpret it the best you guys can. Let's start with Kelley. Anything around resiliency for your clients that you wish they would really understand?
And going back to the definition of resiliency is, being able to withstand changes, pretty much, and changes happen in every aspect of our life. So understanding, again, as I said, I was the person that ate the elephant all the time, taking it bit by bit, piece by piece. You don't have to start out becoming a vegan if you don't want to overnight, or doing a 24-hour fast. It's okay to fast for 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever the case may be. And it's okay to walk, and then it's okay to run. As with babies, right? We all have to crawl before we walk. So just understanding that resiliency takes time to build, and that's okay.
That's great. Aimee?
That's wonderful. And I'd also add, it's okay not to know, and it's okay to let go of trying to figure things out of what my life is going to be like next month or next year or 5 years from now, because sometimes that can really add to anxiety, that it's okay to say, gosh, I really don't know. And that's where it comes back to what I said before, which is then letting go of some of those thoughts, taking a break, coming back into the moment, settle, and then just do the next right thing. So this is back to the bits of the elephant too, because if you just do one next right thing after another, try to let go of outcome, you're going to get to where you need to go.
That's great. Juan?
I said it earlier, but I think if there's one message that I want people to get, and I'll say it clearly, I don't know which camera I should look at. This one. You are not, okay, sorry. You are not your business. As a founder, it's so easy to associate your identity with your business. And when your business fails, that can be a mental health crisis, right? Because that's become your identity. And yes, your business can be built around your passion, and that's fantastic. But it's not you, right? You're not the business. And I think if you can go in with that mindset of, look, this business is built around my passion, but I'm not the business. You get something like a global pandemic, it affects your business. You can pivot it, you can shut it down, you can start another one, right? It's a lot easier to bounce back. But if your identity becomes the business, it's a lot harder to do that. So that's the one thing. You're not your business.
I love that you repeated that again, because I think that is so important. Any other questions? Online, Sam, or in person? Here.
You know, part of my issue with this whole code is loss of routine. I had a nice routine when I was coming here 18 months ago. I had a whole routine through my workout. When I workout, like when we my workout when the kids left, and I work at home, that would be here by 10:30 at the day. The workout line at first grade. COVID comes, and now I like to work out.
And so for the online audience, what she's talking about is loss of routine, you know, and how that has impacted her over the last 18 months. So do you guys have any observations on top of Cynthia's observation about loss of routine? Any insights that you think would be beneficial?
One of the things that I think has been helpful for clients and for me is to take some time out, especially first thing in the morning, to really have some quiet time, however you want to use that, to say, what do I want to do today? And really hit these three areas of mind, body, spirit. I find that having an intention for my day, even if it doesn't go according to plan, it's still having an intention and putting it out there. And then at the close of my day, reflecting on that. That helps me when I'm routineless, because at least for that day, I can create something that hopefully is going to be useful.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like we have the in-person routines of those being disrupted, and then our goal setting looks different as well. So I like you're just bringing it back to again for the day, because as long as it's moving you in the right direction and making intention around that, that's great. Kelley.
I think that we all have that moment where we're trying to get to a specific destination and it reroutes us because there's traffic or there's like construction in the road, right? You're like, hold on, wait 1 second. And I need to be there at a specific time in a specific moment versus just having to be there, you know? And so for me, going back to what Aimee said, I am the type of person that there are specific things that has to get done throughout the day. I write those things off. I am a checklist crosser outer person too. And long as they get done, they're done. So with that being said, you know, I think our routines are going to change a lot. And I know that COVID has changed the routines for us dramatically. So again, you know, writing them out, getting them done that day, and then reflecting on that is awesome, really, to me.
Do you have anything to add, Juan?
I can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever my routine was pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic happened. And it's funny because you hear from all these people that are like, oh, I have so much extra time now, right? I'm taking up a new hobby. I'm learning a new language. I was like, that was not the case for me, right? Any routine I had got blown up. I did sort of say like, oh, wow, like I'm home more, so I'm going to design a new routine. I'm going to be intentional. That hasn't survived my kids. So I think, to what was already said, really just focusing on what the big rocks are. If anybody's familiar with the Stephen Covey concept of you put the big rocks in first, and then the little rocks can kind of can find their way into the jar or the bucket, whatever it was. Focus on what those big rocks are, right? If you can, what are the 3 big things I want to accomplish today? Get those done. Everything else sort of finds its way in. So just trying to do a little more of that.
That's great. Well, thank you all for attending today, all of our guests and for our panelists. Your time is very valuable and we really appreciate you being here with us. And we'll stay for a few minutes afterwards if anyone wants to, meet one-on-one to say hello. And thank you guys. And we'll keep you posted when we have the next Triple Threat panel. Look at the Advent website on the events page, and that's when you'll see when the next one's coming. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.